Okay, so I can see I'm competing with the wine. Thank you for those of you who have resisted it and come to hear my presentation. Now, when Jan asked me what I was going to be talking about this year, I told him I'd like to talk about communicating with investors. After all, for all the startups that are here, that's your first priority. Unfortunately, that's not what I'm going to be talking about, and I've also changed the title of my presentation. Sorry, Jan. So let me explain myself. For most early-stage companies, the priority in terms of communicating is naturally talking with investors. So when I'm working with startups, their thinking tends to be, we've got very little money, we've got limited time, so what we want to do is something really focused, really high impact that just gets us talking to investors. The problem is, that's just not how communications works. Now, I believe passionately in the role that good communications can play in building successful businesses. But very often that isn't people's experience, and that's because they take the wrong approach, or frankly, they just expect the impossible. So I'm going to start by telling you the truth about communications. There are no quick fixes. There are no shortcuts. It's hard work, it's long-term. You have to commit, and you have to be patient. So the truth is there isn't just one quick, direct way of talking with investors. Well, actually, that's not true. You can pick up the phone and you can talk with them. You can go out and you can meet with them. So maybe you're thinking, okay, Alisa, that's great. I can do that. I can go and talk with investors. But how do I get their attention in the first place? How do I make sure that they've heard of me before I engage with them? And how do I make sure that they're impressed with my company when they look me up after our meeting? Well, that's where the hard work bit comes in. That's what a good, sustained communication campaign can do for you. Communication can build your reputation. It can convert conversations into investment and interest into sales. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So let's just take a quick look back at the fundamental principles of good communication that anyone who was here last year might remember. Number one, you simply cannot be successful without good communication. 2, brand is fundamental and you need to think about it from day one. 3, find your why. Give people something to believe in. Now, I'm going to assume that you've all done your homework since last year. So, you know who you are as a company. You know what makes you different. You know that you need to communicate, and you're ready to build on those foundations. What comes next? How to build and engage an audience. And that, I'm happy to say, is the title of my presentation. So it starts with collateral. It feels a bit embarrassingly obvious to talk about this, but it's often overlooked. You have to look and sound like your brand. So even though money's tight, you're going to have to invest a certain amount in translating that vision that you've defined for your company into a visual identity alongside a clear and compelling story. It doesn't have to be award-winning, it doesn't have to be expensive, but it does have to be effective, and it has to be right for you. So get yourself a logo that says something about who you are as a company, and then develop some basic visual language, such as an imagery style and a color palette. Then sit down and write your story. And once you've written it, break down that story so that you can describe your company in one paragraph and then just one sentence. And really challenge yourself to make sure that that written content is clear and accessible to a wide audience. So now you're armed with your key messages and your visual identity. You have to use them, always, everywhere. Every business card, every email signature, every LinkedIn profile. You need to invest the time to go through absolutely everything that represents your company and bring it in line. And by the way, everyone within your company needs to get this as well. So your whole team needs to talk about the company in the same way. They have to use the same language, and they have to hit the same key messages. That's how you build your reputation. That's how you make sure people remember you. It's how you make sure they get it quickly and they stay engaged. Then we move on to looking at content. Now, anyone who was at Ecosummit Amsterdam earlier this year will have heard my colleague Emma, our head of film, talk about content strategy for clean tech startups. And of course, if you missed it, then you can check it out on Ecosummit TV. But today, I'm talking specifically about crafting content to tell your story. Now, okay, blogging is really nothing new, but it's still a really effective way of building your audience. And I know that for a lot of people, the idea of producing regular blog content feels like a burden. Well, suck it up, because that's just life as a startup. It's hard work. The good news is you're probably already producing lots of bloggable content you're just not thinking about it that way. So let's say that you're writing emails to investors explaining why your technology is different to your competitors. Well, that can also be content for a blog. Or if you're producing technical drawings that explain how your process works, you can use those in your content. It's just about a change of mindset. It's about sharing it, about documenting your journey, about commenting on your industry. When you're producing content, 2 things to bear in mind. Number 1, really important, always strive to add value. If you just produce content for the sake of trying to sell your product, people will switch off straight away. And 2, you have to invest time in distribution. You need to invest just as much time in distributing, in fact, as creating your content. And there are so many channels available to amplify your content, but you just have to make sure that you're using them. And you need to do all of this with creativity, because it's a crowded marketplace out there. We're all bombarded with content every single second of the day, and there are infinite possibilities for where we can apply our attention. So, if you want some of that attention, you're going to have to earn it. You're going to have to think about how you can do things differently. And again, I can't stand up here and give you the right answer for you, but look at what works for you. Where are you spending your time? What gets your attention? And what can you use from that? And then look at your competitors and think about what you can do differently. And I'm really not talking about big, flashy, gimmicky ideas, because those rarely work in the long term. So it might just be something as simple as daring to share your personal journey and challenges and bringing real personality to your communications. Or perhaps you can use a channel that's overlooked by your competitors. So how many of them are on Instagram, for example? Perhaps there's an opportunity for you to own the conversation in that space. Maybe it's just as simple as delivering your content in a way that's really entertaining. The point is, the possibilities are endless, but you've got to be brave, you've got to stick your neck out, and you've got to be willing to try things. So that's it. Those are the fundamentals. That's the hard work that you have to do. And I just want to finish with 2 points that aren't really about the mechanics of communication, but hopefully provide some useful food for thought. Firstly, consistency. You have to live and breathe your brand. A brand does not exist because you sat down, you ran a brand exercise, you wrote down some words you all felt good about, patted yourself on the back, and then went back to running your business just the way you did before. Of course, you have to get on with running your business, but the point is, I believe, the way that you run your business has to match with your brand. Otherwise, people just won't buy it. Brand and culture have to go hand in hand. And finally, celebration. There's no doubt about it, clean tech is a tricky sector. It's been in and out of favor with investors. It requires levels of patience and investment that are hard to come by. But it's also delivering real, meaningful change. It's also tackling some of the biggest problems faced by mankind. And it's delivering significant returns, economically, socially, and environmentally. So really, clean tech can be quite sexy, but only if we all commit to celebrating our successes and celebrating our sector. And I think too often we're happy to just sit back quietly and wait for the world to come to us. But hopefully you can see that's not how it works. I think we can all be a little bit prouder, a little bit louder, and bring people with us on the journey. And if after all that you're thinking, okay, lovely, but I really just want to talk to investors, then let me make it really simple. Communications can build and engage your audience. And you build and engage an audience so that ultimately you can sell stuff. And if there's one thing that investors want to see more than anything else, it's that you can sell it. So I'll leave you with this quote from Nick Lythe of Green Angel Syndicate. If they can't sell it, they can't succeed. So, get started. Thank you.